All right, before I get to my next guest, Jane Geddes, I want to remind you about our friends over at the Ben Hogan Golf Equipment Company. Now, folks, if you haven't hit Ben Hogan irons since maybe the 80s or the 90s, do yourself a favor. They've got a demo iron program. You can go right on their website, benhogangolf.com. You can order a demo from whatever one of their lines of irons you want. Fort Worth, PTX, new PTX Pro or Edge iron. They're going to send you a demo iron, and you go out on the range and compare it to whatever it is you've got, right? So their irons and everything that they make is absolutely spectacular. Irons and wedges handcrafted one at a time in their Fort Worth, Texas factory. So they've got no mass production. There's no shortcuts going on. You can now order custom-made irons, wedges, and hybrids by going online to their site. Again, benhogangolf.com, and they're going to build those clubs to your specifications. The best of all, they're going to charge you a fraction of the typical retail price. So go online, check out their complete line of forged irons and wedges, their utility irons, their hybrids, their bag, their accessories, their new GS53 driver and fairway woods, which are absolutely outstanding as well. And go online and get yourself one and check it out and compare it to what you got. I'm telling you, you're going to love it. benhogangolf.com. All right, now joining me here on the French Lick Resort guest line is LPGA legend Jane Geddes. Jane is from Summerville, South Carolina, played her college golf at Florida State, helped them win the 1981 National Championship. She was inducted into their Hall of Fame back in 1988. She joined the LPGA Tour in 83. She got her first career victory at a major at the 86 Women's U.S. Open. She backed it up with a win the very next week at the Boston 5 Classic, becoming one of only 4 players in LPGA history to do that, win back-to-back weeks following the U.S. Open. She won the 1987 LPGA Championship. So you look at that, back-to-back weeks again at the Women's Kemper Open. Unbelievable that these 2 back-to-back wins happened. In all, she won 11 times, 52 top 10 finishes as well. She's out there on the LPGA Legends Tour now. She's working with the LPGA and the amateurs there. The list goes on, folks. She's an amazing woman, and I'm absolutely thrilled she's with me tonight here on Next on the Tee. Good evening, Jane. Thank you for joining me.
Wow, thank you, Chris. I'm thrilled to be here, and I thank you for that really, really nice introduction. Some of it seems like another lifetime, but I truly appreciate it.
I appreciate you. So, Jane, like I said, there's so many amazing things about you and your career. But I tell you what, the first thing that struck me was I was kind of doing the research into your background. I read that you didn't start playing golf until you were 16. And then a couple years later, you're on a national championship team at Florida State. Is that accurate?
That's accurate. It's a little crazy. You know, I had a sort of a fast track into the game, and I grew up on Long Island, and none of my family played golf, and my dad got transferred down to South Carolina, outside of Charleston and Somerville, and I was a little bit miserable being there. I was, 15 years old. I'd only known Long Island. I had a very Long Island accent, and I get thrown into, the kind of deep South. And so it was a bit of a culture shock for me. And my parents were trying to figure out what are they going to do with me. I played every sport, and I was athletic, and I loved to play softball and volleyball and all different kinds of things. And my mom read an article in the Charleston Post-Courier about Beth Daniel and her teacher, Derek Hardy. Beth had just won her second U.S. Amateur at that time, and there was an article about them. And my mom said to me, "Do you want to maybe play golf?" And I was like, "No, I hate golf. I have what?" And so, very, very long story short, my mom did not listen to me. Set up a lesson with Derek, and kind of the rest is history. And so it was the right time, the right place, the right teacher. And basically Derek said to my mom, "If you bring Jane back to see me, I won't charge you, and I'll teach her." And that was one of those things, it's kind of that moment in time, that, I believe, as I look at my life and I look at, how my life has sort of transformed all different ways, I tend to believe in fate. And that was one of those times that, Derek came in my life at the right time. And so I only knew, I never swung golf club in my life. So I only knew one way. So how I swing now is how I was taught by Derek when I was, during my first lesson. So it's kind of a unique thing, but I feel very fortunate.
And then, Jane, that's so amazing because for most of us, it takes us 10 years just to get bad at golf. And here you are a couple of years in and you're winning a national championship at Florida State. One of the things that I find in talking to, some of your peers is that playing other sports, and you mentioned what a great athlete you were in playing a variety of different sports. Did playing those other sports help golf come naturally to you so that you could go out there and pick it right up and the next thing you know, it's history?
I think so. I don't know that anything I played, with the exception of softball that provided the hand-eye. But certainly my love of sports, my family's love of sports, gave me that, that insight and kind of motivation that it was the first time that I really played a sport that was not a team sport. So for me, it was very intriguing, because I was on my own and I was able to do something on my own and didn't have to depend on my team or didn't have to, worry about what a coach said or anything. It was really up to me. And so I think, to answer your question, I think in a yes, I think being able to play a multitude of sports is helpful all the way around. I mean, I have kids and I encourage them to play all different sports. I would love for them to play golf, but if they don't, if it's not their thing, it's okay. I mean, at some point I want them to learn and they are, and they'll be okay at it. But I think being able to play a multitude of sports teaches you all different life lessons along the way. And so, when I look at that and I look at what I did throughout my life, I think it sort of enhanced a lot of the things that I was able to do throughout my life, doing all those different sports and not just golf.
And Gene, being there in South Carolina makes me wonder, and I'm here in Atlanta. How did Florida State get you? How did all the SEC schools miss you, and you get to Florida State?
I was really lucky that Florida State even took my call. So what happened to me was I've been playing golf about a year and a half, and I decided, wow, I think I want to go to school and play golf. So you can imagine I'm a beginner, and so I start making phone calls to schools and actually visited UNC Chapel Hill and spoke to the coach, Doc Gunnell, who is a fabulous coach there, and she was sort of like, "Oh, I'm so glad you came to visit me, honey. Don't call us, we'll call you." And I loved Dot, and she was, very sweet. But I'm a kid coming along that's shooting in the mid 90s, right? And so I was fortunate that a school in North Carolina, University of North Carolina, Charlotte, had a sort of a little bit of a ragtag golf team. They allowed me to come there and play during my freshman year. The problem was after the first semester, they dropped the golf team. We only had 3 players. You're supposed to have 5. So they eliminated the golf program. So I find that out at the end of my first semester there. So I start calling schools. I figure out that, I really need to be in the Sun Belt to play golf. So I know that I need to be, down south and whatnot. So I start calling schools, in South Carolina, in Florida and whatnot. And pretty much every school that I called, the reaction was, "Thank you so much, we'll get back to you," except for Florida State. So when I called Verlin Giles, the coach of Florida State, he said, "Well, if you want to come down and try out for the team, you can try out for the team." So I saw that was the most positive reaction I had gotten. So I applied to Florida State, got in, went down and tried out for the team, practiced my butt off between that January and the, August that I went down, and actually lowered my score, I would say 10 or 12 shots, and was shooting sort of in the low 80s, high 70s, went down and tried out for the team in Florida State and made it. And then, we were a bit of a sort of interesting team there where we had a bunch of players from Canada and all different. We weren't sort of the usual college team where it was the junior players from the U.S. And then, lo and behold, my junior year there, we won the national championship. And it was just, again, that fate thing that, this happens in my life and I end up here and I have this amazing experience. That was, sort of one of the first kind of moments for me that I said, wow, that was just amazing. Like, how did that even happen? So just crazy.
One of the many remarkable things about your time there, and I read, I think it was your sophomore year, you and Lisa Young fired opening round 70s at the Lady Gator tournament to set the tournament record. You ended up finishing 5th that week, but it was clear, like, from the moment, you're on the big stage there. I mean, you're playing against the Gators and all these big schools.
Yeah.
You weren't intimidated. You didn't appear intimidated a bit. How did you deal with suddenly doing that?
You know what? I didn't even know. I was still new to the sport, and it was, for me, it was, I didn't grow up in it. I didn't have this sort of junior pressure. It was, for me, I was in college and I was trying to do the best I could do. And honestly, when I started at Florida State, I did not have this grand plan to turn pro at all. I was, it was a way for me to, I ended up getting a scholarship. I earned a scholarship at Florida State. And so it was a way for me to get through college. And so until, I would say after we won the national championship, did I even start thinking about, like, this is something that I really want to do, and maybe there's an opportunity for me professionally. But for me, it was just kind of an ends to a mean, which is kind of funny. But again, when you're playing sports and all you want to do is the best you can do, right? And so that's what I was trying to do every week. And I go back a little bit as well, back to my original sort of the origin was being able to be taught by an amazing professional. Derek Hardy taught Beth Daniel, and I was very fortunate to get in and be on his roster as well. And he was an amazing teacher for me in particular. He was sort of the right recipe for me and how I learned the game and how I sort of my intake of information. So I feel very fortunate that I had that sort of fast track in a very, very simple program that he created for me to learn the game of golf. And it really gave me the ability to really fast track my game. And I feel very fortunate because of that.
And not only did you help win the national championship there in 81, you won a golf tournament. You won the 81 South Florida Invitational. What do you remember about your first college victory?
At the Claw, at University of South Florida. I mean, I can remember a few holes. It was one of those where, again, I'm in this situation where this is all new. I'm not a junior golfer that has won tournaments. I'd never won a golf tournament in my life till I won that event. And so I went through this period of time from the time I started playing until, honestly, to when I won the U.S. Open, that almost everything I was doing was like new. I was just doing my best. It was like, I'm like a hamster on a wheel, and I'm playing the best I can play, and I'm doing the best I can play, and oh my gosh, I won. Honestly, that was, until I knew better, which was sort of after the U.S. Open and when reality really struck. I was just doing my thing. I was trying to get through college. I was trying to, it was cool. I was playing well. And then, I went on to the mini tour and trying to do the best I can do there and make some money and whatever. But it was always kind of trying to get to the next spot that I sort of happened into, good situations, as kind of it happens sometimes in golf, right? Sometimes when you least expect it, you're playing really well and there you are. And so that happened to happen, like you said, at that tournament at USF. So
you win that tournament, you win a national championship, you fast forward a few years, your first victory on the LPGA Tour, as you mentioned a moment ago, is the U.S. Open. I mean, that's a heck of a way to get your first win on the LPGA Tour. And you did it in a playoff, by the way, and came back as I was kind of looking through that round. You were actually down
Yeah.
3 strokes at one point on the front
Yeah.
nine, and you come all the way back to win. Talk about that.
Yeah, it was crazy. You know, I went into that week. It was really interesting. I had a really, really, really bad week the week before that Open. Went home, kind of videoed my swing, which was a big deal back then because I had to have a camera to do it. I did it in my front yard of my house. No lie. I had a camera and I wanted to take a look at my swing. And what I realized then was, yeah, I'm not swinging it that bad. Like, why am I playing so bad? Derek had committed to coming to the Open that week, and so he was there early in the week, and stood on the range with me on Tuesday and said, "You're swinging it great." Like, I just remember him saying that, and I was hitting it. I couldn't hit it any better. And so I started off the week with this just really good sense of my game and where I was going. But it was only my second U.S. Open, and you know, anybody that knows what happened at the NCR Club in Dayton that year, we had, you know, all kinds of things happen. We had an earthquake, we had a train crash, we had a plane crash, we had all storms, it was a crazy, crazy week. So it wasn't a normal tournament week. And maybe that was helpful because in the end, it was extremely disruptive to anyone that would have been sort of really, really focused on that week or whatnot. And I was, you know, clearly I was focused, but, you know, I got in a situation during the last round where I was able to, tie for the lead with Sally Little. And, it was interesting because I went out on Monday and, you know, ignorance is bliss, you know, and I'm not a big practicer or warmer-upper, you know, and so I was feeling good about my swing. I went out on the driving range and hit a couple balls and hit some putts. And I was at the first tee before they even had set the tees. And I was actually sitting on my bag on the first tee when PJ Boatwright, the executive director of the USGA, then kind of came up on the tee. He looks at me like, "Are you crazy? What are you doing? You know, like, look at this kid. Like, you know, what are you doing sitting here?" And I just said, and he said, "What are you not warming up?" I said, "I'm warmed. I'm ready to go." And you know, it was almost like he looked at me like I was absolutely crazy. But, you know, it was, I don't know. Again, it's, sort of ignorance is bliss. And I went out and tried to play my best. And it was, I played a great round. I remember being 3 down at the turn. I remember saying to my caddy saying to me, like, "Let's bring it on the backside." And I was playing so well or I was hitting the ball so well, which for me is the key, right? I'm not a great, I've never been a great putter and never had a great short game, but for me, my ball striking was key and I was hitting it really, really well. And I came out in the end and won the event. And you know, when I look at it now, I wish, you know, it's something that it was wonderful that it was my first tournament that I won. It's like amazing. But I think I maybe would have appreciated it more if it was maybe a few years down the road. And not that I don't, I mean, you know, it's my greatest achievement. And as I say to everyone in golf, you know, for me, anything that I do in golf now is the cherry on top because I've won the U.S. Open. And so I've sort of, you know, said that my whole career. So everything else beyond that, I had a career that I'm very, very proud of. But that was that thing that, you know, that moment that, you know, most every golfer that plays, would give anything to be able to experience. And I was able to experience that. So I'm so grateful. And I look back on it and I appreciate it. I appreciate it far more now than I ever did. It seems like every year that goes by, I appreciate it more. So.
To that point, Jane, and you talk about that moment, you had a 2-stroke lead on the last hole. Do you remember? I mean, what was it like? 2-stroke lead, last hole, U.S. Open. Were you in the moment? What was that stroll had to be amazing.
I was then. I'll tell you when I wasn't in the moment. I wasn't in the moment but like a little bit out of my mind during the last round. So on the 16th hole of the last round, there was a scoreboard. And I knew I was kind of near the lead, but I didn't know because I had not been in the lead at all. And I looked up at the scoreboard and I was in the lead, or I was tied to lead. I can't remember. All I know is my name was on top. And at the moment I was looking at the scoreboard, my caddy was busy getting the yardage and whatnot. And I looked back at him, and he was, it was my turn to hit. And he said, you have 160 to the front, you have 7 more, 167. He gives me the whole thing, blah, 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 a little uphill, blah, blah, blah. And I look at him with an absolute blank look on my face. And I don't say anything. I don't attempt to get a club or anything. And he says to me, I gotcha. He had seen the scoreboard, and I was stunned. I mean, literally pulled up I was a forearm. It kind of took my forearm in my bag and hit my forearm, and he guided me in the rest of the way, except for the 18th tee, where for me, I had stood on the driving range, and I know that there, so many golfers out there that, especially aspiring, players that stand on the driving range and say, this drive is for the U.S. Open. I'm leading, and I got to hit this drive right down the middle. And I stood on the 18th tee that day, and I'll never forget that I thought, I've hit this drive a million times. And I hit it right down the middle of the fairway, and went ahead and parred that hole and got into the playoff. But I was way better in the playoff as far as just being present and knowing, because in the end, for me, it was, wow, if I win, that's awesome. But if I don't, it's still kind of awesome, I mean, so I was on a bit of a high, I mean, it was my first tournament. I'm in this situation, and, I don't even know what to expect. So I was just playing my butt off to try to figure out who was going to win in the end, and I know for Sally was sort of in the twilight of her career. And I know that it was, it was something that for her would have really been sort of the cherry on top of her career. And I knew that. So I was going to be the spoiler, so kind of going in as a spoiler, you have a little different view of things than if it's something you so are, want, and this might be your last moment. I was in the beginning of my career. So, silly me is thinking, if I don't win now, I'll win some other time, I mean, crazy me right now saying that. But that's, that's sort of that's what you think of when you're, 26 years old and your life's in front of you. So.
Jane, just a couple more before I let you go. And the following year, you win the '87 LPGA Championship, and you did it, against Lori Rinker, somebody you played against when she was at Florida. So you guys must have had tremendous battles over the years from college all the way through your LPGA careers. You also beat Rosie Jones and Betsy King. Talk about what you remember about the LPGA Championship that following year.
Yeah, the LPGA Championship the following year was interesting because it was, I'd won a few tournaments, and I think I was probably number one on the money list then or something. I was rolling at that point. And, what was interesting about that, and this is less about the golf, but more about me and kind of a funny thing. So when we went into that week, it was being played at Kings Island, in Cincinnati, Ohio, a Jack Nicklaus course. And it was a great golf course, but the setup that we had that year and some previous years, the rough wasn't necessarily up, and it was, it was okay. It wasn't like a super challenging major championship golf course in my eyes, right? And so, of course, I'm hearing this not only from my eyes, but I'm hearing it in the locker room, and Kathy Whitworth doesn't show up, and she doesn't want to play because it's not, she doesn't feel like it's championship caliber. It was like kind of a funny situation going on in the locker room. So me, as, the person that now had a voice, I started talking about this early in the week and start talking about Kings Island maybe not being a great test and everything. So, that was not really the right thing to be saying that. But again, I'm a kid, and I'm saying what's on my mind, and I'm protecting the players, and I think I'm saying the right thing. So I win the event, and I come off, out of the tent, and, I go to get a ride to the press room to go do my interviews and whatnot. And John Lopheimer, the commissioner of the LPGA at that point, was there to kind of meet me. And I thought that was really funny. And I said, "Oh, hi, John. So nice to be here," whatever. And he said, "You know what? You don't need a ride. Will you walk with me?" And so we walked, a couple hundred yards to the press tent, and he put his arm around me. And John, by the way, was the greatest guy and sort of a dad to all of us, And John said to me, I'm going to sit in on your press conference, and here's what I would like you to communicate to the tournament. Like you have now, ripped the golf course, ripped the sponsor, and so I don't even know what I was saying, but John gave me a completely new sort of dialogue to sit down in the chair after I won and be a good winner. And he was sitting in the back of the press room as I gave my press conference, and I will never forget that. And it was probably one of the best lessons I had ever learned. When you're going, when you're inside the ropes and you're a player and you are looking at the tour and looking at tournaments from your perspective, you unknowingly are not necessarily appreciating what goes into putting that event on. The sponsors, the money, the golf course, all of those things. And so I learned that lesson that day by John Lopheimer giving me all the right cues to say the right thing going into that press conference. And he wasn't trying to tell me to say something that I didn't believe, but it was a great learning moment for me to be able to communicate how I felt, maybe just in a different way. So it's interesting because that's the one thing that I remember about that event, in addition to it being a great win. And I actually sort of topped a 1-iron across the water, I think, on the last hole. I kind of skimmed it across the water to get it on the green on the par 5. But in the end, it was about those last moments with me and John that I'll never, ever, ever forget. And it was something that that I from that moment on, I've carried on through the rest of my career, whether it was in golf or business or anything else.
Jane, one more before I let you go. And you were CEO of the Executive Women's Golf Association for a while, not all that long ago. The EWGA became a part of the LPGA. Update us on what you're doing now.
Yeah, thanks, Chris. I'm actually, I was really fortunate to be able to be in that position to bring the EWGA to the LPGA and felt like that was a great move for the 13,000 women across the U.S. to be able to be associated with the LPGA, the greatest women's sports association, especially associated with golf in the world. And as I kind of moved through that and moved through that transition, I was asked to take over the CEO role of the Legends Tour, which are the LPGA, the former LPGA or former LPGA players that are, from my era, all of my friends and peers that I played with, to kind of take a really close look at, can we create a Legends Tour or Legends experiences out there where we can, go out in those communities that, that Rochester, Youngstown, Corning, Seattle, Phoenix, all those communities that we had such a great following, for players that some of the greatest names, in women's golf, Nancy Lopez, Meg Mallon, Beth Daniel, Amy Alcott, I can go down the list, all the 14 Hall of Famers that are members of our tour. And so right now I'm about 3 months in to try to look to 2020 to sort of, try to get the word out there and say, we're out here. We might not play as well as we used to, but we play some pretty darn good golf. And kind of looking to some of those communities, and areas that would really appreciate us coming back around and creating sort of a reunion of sorts. And so, I appreciate you giving me an opportunity to talk about that. I'm passionate about that. I'm passionate because it's my era. Those are my friends and my peers and people that I believe really made the tour what it is today, along with the founders and along with the era that came before us. And so, it's exciting to be representing them, in this capacity. And, and I look forward to the future and hoping, to visit some of the people that are listening to your podcast and the great work that you do and getting the word out there that we're out there and the LPGA legends, are out there and we're interested in coming back and being a part of your communities again, maybe in a different capacity, but we're all still around and certainly willing to play some golf with everyone.
Well, Jane, let our listeners know, how can they stay up to date with all the great things you're out there doing and follow the LPGA Legends Tour and keep track of everything that's going on, whether it's online or it's on social media?
Yeah, I'm on Twitter at Geddes LPGA, GEDDES LPGA. The legendstour.com has a fairly up-to-date schedule and has news about who we are and where we're going. Hopefully that will be enhanced as we kind of move forward here and look to 2020. But I think if again, social media, the website, the LPGA.com to be able to follow the tour, I think you'll get a glimpse of us. I want to mention too how much we appreciate French Lick and their commitment to hosting the Senior LPGA Championship that's coming up in a few weeks at French Lick. It's really our premier event, along with the U.S. Senior Women's Open that came on the schedule a couple, 2 years ago. And so we appreciate the support of French Lick and all the folks there, and really look forward to going back there this year and in the years to come, and hopefully kind of grow our tour base and grow our tournament base. And so, like I said, the people that have seen us in the past can see us again.
Well, Jane, it's been a huge thrill having you as part of the show. So many other things I'd love to get your thoughts on. I hope you'll come back and join me again sometime. You're fantastic.
Chris, I would love to, really. And as I kind of progress in what we're doing, I would love to be able to come back and talk about, the Legends Tour and the LPGA and how we're kind of forging a new path. And so thank you so much for having me. I would, happy to come back and talk anytime. We have plenty to talk about.
Indeed, we do. Thank you so much, Jane. All the best to you and your family. Hopefully we catch up again real soon.
Awesome. Same to you, Chris. Thank you.
See you, Jane. That's the great Jane Geddes, folks. And I tell you, was that fun? Holy smokes, that was fun. Talking to her and listening to all the great things that she has done. And hopefully we get an opportunity to get her back again real soon. The Legends Tour, as you guys know, is very special to me. Our good friend Cindy Miller, a huge part of that tour as well. So looking forward to catching up with Jane. She's absolutely amazing.